Hello, welcome everyone. My name's Neil. I'll be the moderator today. We'll give it just a couple minutes to get started here, but we've got a really special session with some special people. Um, and I just wanted to also note that Friday, May 22nd, will be the 1 year anniversary of Amanda Fielding's passing. So we're keeping her in our mind through this session. Um, she cared a lot about this topic. And if you heard her speak about psychedelics and the end of life, she thought it was a human right. And I got to say that I agree as well. Um, so we're just a minute in. We'll give it another couple minutes. Welcome, everyone. For those that just joined, my name's Neil. I'll be the moderator today. Okay, looks like we've got a pretty good sized group. That's exciting.
Great. It's exciting.
There's an echo. I don't think we're having an echo. So Kim, it might be on your computer. Um, Welcome everyone that just joined. Thank you for spending some time today. Um, for those that just joined, I just wanted to note that on Friday is the 1 year anniversary of Amanda Fielding's passing, and we're holding her in our hearts today as we do this session. This was a topic that was very important to her, and we were just before this call started laughing a bit that the day before she passed, she was laughing and joking, and she knew that her days were numbered, but she went out with a smile on her face, surrounded family and friends. So we're all very happy about couple minutes in so we can kind of get started. Humbled and honored to be part of this group. Many I've known for quite a few years now and gotten to do some really important work with. And today we're going to be talking about psychedelics, and aging and morality. And this session can be a bit interactive. So if you guys have questions, you can feel free to put those in the chat and we'll try and get to those at the end of the session. And also we'll be recording this. So if you, have friends that you want to send it to, we really appreciate that. And we'll be sending out more resources to everybody that was able to join. And again, my name's Neil Markey. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Beckley Retreats, which was co-founded in partnership with Amanda Fielding and the Beckley Foundation. That's where the name comes from. And I've got a really special panel today, and I'll let them introduce themselves. So I'll pass it over to my dear friend, Dr. Dingle, to get us started.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to this webinar. This is very exciting. So my name is Dingle Spence, and I am born and raised in Jamaica, and looking out at the Blue Mountains as we speak. Professionally, I'm trained as an oncologist and palliative care doctor, so I spend a lot of time working with people coming towards end of life. I'm also trained in Chinese medicine, Reiki, shamanic energy medicine, and various other things. And I'm a psychedelic facilitator with Beckley. And having semi-retired from my job as an oncologist, I now get to spend a lot of time in the retreat space with Beckley Retreats. And I have to say, it's probably the most fulfilling work that I've ever done. So my whole background kind of coalesces into.
Thank you, Dr. Dingle. And let Christine, can you give a short intro for yourself too, please?
Yeah, thank you. It's so lovely to be here. Hi to all. Wish I could see your faces. But I'm Chris Caldwell, the founder and executive director for End of Life Psychedelic Care. I came to it by way of first being in marketing and sales in Silicon Valley, which sounds a little bit weird, but then I owned a home healthcare agency in Sarasota, Florida. When I started to study psychedelics and I completed the Psychedelics Today Vital training their therapies and integration program, um, it hit me as to what I was going to do. I knew there was a niche that was not being served in end of life psychedelic care. And I think right up front, I just want to say end of life, we talk about anyone with a serious or life threatening illness. We don't technically mean at the very, very end of life. So, yeah, it's just like, wow, I know what I'm going to do. And we're primarily an educational organization, but we get involved in a lot of other programs. One of the most recent ones is we were funded for a home-based ketamine and spiritual care pilot. And so we're in the middle of running that now. And I'm just really excited to actually be looking at how we're going to deliver these medicines to the people who need them.
Thank you, Christine. And Abby, if you could give us an intro, please. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks, Neil, and thanks for having me, the Beckley people. My name's Abby Rosner. I'm a writer, and I'm not a facilitator or practitioner, but I'm an observer of this fascinating cultural phenomena of my baby boomer generation discovering and rediscovering the drugs of our youth. And this is a topic I've written about for starting out with cannabis and how older adults are finding cannabis to be helpful in their experience of aging. And then after I read Michael Pollan's book, How to Change Your Mind, I thought, oh, well, if cannabis is really can help how we age, let's look at psilocybin. And I was particularly impressed with the end-of-life studies and how psychedelic assisted therapy can help us come to terms with mortality. And I thought, we all have a terminal diagnosis. And so maybe this is really appropriate, not just when we're facing the end, but in our older years. And this is an insight that has actually borne out. And my investigations of how older adults are exploring psychedelics led to my writing a book, which is coming out soon, called Psychedelics and the Counterculture of Aging. So I'll talk about that more during the session. So thanks.
Thank you, Abby. And yes, what a impressive panel we have today to speak about this important topic. And I've found that it's quite interesting here in the United States how we think about death. It's a bit taboo. It's feared or denied. It's not really talked about. It's quite different than a lot of other cultures in the world. And Christine, I know you work intimately with people that are in this last phase of life, and what's coming up for them when morality or mortality comes into the picture? Is it just the fear of dying, or is there something more there?
That's a great question. And I want to say, and obviously, Dr. Dingle could speak to this, even from Jamaica, understanding the Western culture that we have here in the States and North America. Death has been known as a medical failure. Doctors do not want to see their patients die. So one of the main reasons why I founded End of Life Psychedelic Care was to shift our beliefs in death and dying, to come to our own understanding and come to peace with death and dying. So having said that, yeah, we've done a lot of work to understand, I'll call it the client mindset. You know how we always talk about set and setting. So the client mindset when they're faced with a terminal or life-threatening illness really does shift. And it's along several dimensions. So first of all, think about physiological, where there's a disease process, where there's probably pain medications that have their own side effects. Think about psychological, where there is anxiety, there is depression, there is this fear of the unknown and the fear of letting go, which I think as humans, we find especially difficult. There's the existential. What purpose? I don't have a purpose. My life has lost meaning. I might have been the matriarch and now I'm not. And, people are taking over and, oh my God, can they do it? Can I let go? Normally not. Sociocultural. What is your family like? Are you like this with your family? Is your family supporting you and now you feel guilty? Which reminds me too, people hold guilt from something they might have done, or they hold guilt or shame because they want somebody to forgive them. So all of this is playing in their mind, and that doesn't even get to the spiritual or religious beliefs, where what does your religion tell you happens after death? So they're dealing with all of this now. So it really has an impact in terms of what their intention is and why they come to using psychedelics. And arguably, and for many people, not all, psychedelics can help either directly or indirectly with all of those things I just talked about.
It's fascinating. And Dingle, I can't help but think about Tanya, um, one terminally ill cancer patient that came down on our program and was very open about her fear of this last stage of life, and then went through the program and just expressed how much more at peace she was with this reality. And it was one of the sweetest things I've witnessed related to this work. But Dingle, you also work with people that are, in their golden years and maybe don't have a terminal condition, but are in that last quarter, last third of life. And what's coming up for them? They're at a different point. How's that different?
Yeah, I think that you're right. That is different. And we do see quite a few people. We see quite a few people at inflection points who come on the Beckley retreat. So we see people who are maybe having a midlife crisis at 40, but we also see people in their late 60s, early to late 60s. Maybe they've retired. The whole kind of, you've done your career, you've achieved everything, your kids have probably left home. And so you're at this point in your life where you're really reflecting, and also you're maybe starting to feel the effects of aging. And it's like, what next? And I think what I've witnessed is that, I was talking to a gentleman today who's the same age as me. We're in our late 60s. And he was like, I'm really interested in psychedelics, but I'm scared, I'm worried. And I don't think I have anything wrong with me. And I just really want us to get away from this idea that, you have to be depressed or anxious or have PTSD or something like that to take psychedelics. And for me, it's like almost the opposite of that. It's like, come, this medicine can help open you to yourself, to the universe, to love, to the preciousness of life. And I think that that's what happens, is that people have an experience where they relate to, this is a quote really, to the fact of their own impending disappearance. At some point, we're going to have to all disappear. But in the meanwhile, how do we live in the preciousness of life and the gratitude? And for me, that's where the real opening and blessing of sitting with psychedelics takes one. Yeah.
Completely agree. And I think, we're so encouraged by the research and interest in these types of experiences for clinical indications, treatment-resistant depression and PTSD, and that's great. And just like you said, you don't need to have a clinical indication to get a lot out of this work. And I think like with the way technology is coming, there's going to be even more this kind of like crisis of meaning. We're all getting disconnected from each other. And I think that's something that's really special about these experiences. And Abby, in your book, I'm so excited to read it, and thank you for collaborating with us on it. But you zoomed out and you're thinking about this from almost a more cultural level. And I love this term that you have, which is the dilemma of the boomer.
Right.
And can you unpack that a bit or explain what you mean with that?
Right. Yeah, thanks, Neil. So as I mentioned before, I'm an aging baby boomer, and I'm very interested in this phenomenon of how we are approaching older life. We're the generation, we have to remember, we're very invested in our youthful identities. We're the generation that revolutionized youth culture. And so as we encountered these milestones that Dingle was mentioning, the empty nest, the end of the career, the diminishing physical capacities, we've got this dissonance that's happening between, who am I? I feel so young, but look at me, like I'm forgetting, all these things. So we're dealing with this, it's like an identity crisis. And if we look around to our society to like get some kind of answers, what do we get? Ageism and longevity. There's really nothing substantive. that's really helping us to come to terms with this longevity, I mean, this identity issue. And so what is exciting to me and what a phenomenon that I see emerging is what I call conscious aging or conscious eldering. And this is where we really look at elderhood not as just like an extension of our youth, but as a distinct period in life where, like Dingle was saying, where we ask these big questions. Who am I? Am I living my most authentic life? Am I ready? Do I have unfinished business? Are there things that I want to do in my life before I die? And I think that, as we delve into these experiences, into these questions, intentional psychedelic work is, in my opinion, ideally suited to supporting those kinds of questions. So I think what we're seeing and what I've documented in my book is this emerging movement of older adults who aren't clinically depressed, who don't have a terminal diagnosis, but are simply what they call themselves seekers. So they're looking at these questions and they want to go beyond what the rational mind can give them and to get these insights that psychedelics can offer to us in a safe and supported environment. So I think that that's like really one of the more exciting ways that our generation, I think, is going to transform the whole narrative around aging and eldering.
I completely agree. And I'm very encouraged. My father just had his 79th birthday, and his peers are interested in coming on our programs now. And that would not been the case 5 years ago. It's kind of a more conservative a group of individuals. So I think that the world is changing. Go ahead, Abby. Yes, please.
I just want to add that the reason that I came to know about Beckley retreats was that I interviewed a woman who celebrated her 80th birthday at the Beckley retreat in Jamaica. And
Yes.
so that was, one of the big aha moments for me was like, oh, really, at 80, you're still, you can still be a seeker and find solutions.
What was it? The couple that came for their birthday, and her husband was 86. Remind me their names. Um,
Another time.
okay, I'd say sweet. And they were, yeah, they had lived a quite successful life, and yeah, were quite well and happy. But then, said it was one of the more meaningful experiences that they had ever had, and they spontaneously quit drinking alcohol and replaced that with a morning tea and meditation session, which is just, I mean, it's as sweet as you can get. Um, Thank you, Abby. And so, we've kind of talked a bit broadly about the field here. There's applications for kind of this end of life, but there's also this really important application that's around meaning and aging gracefully. And Abby, you in your book you quote Michael Pollan, and I love this. It's psychedelics shouldn't be only wasted on the young, right? And so this later stage of life, why do you think that there's something special or unique to the use of these compounds in that stage?
Well, I think that elderhood throughout history and across cultures, it's always been a time of spiritual deepening. We've been cut off from that in our age of society, but it is a time where we invest in our wisdom and our life experience. And I find that in older life, the opportunity to examine your life, when you're doing this examination, but to do it through the lens of a psychedelic medicine can give tremendous and very meaningful insights into processes and things that we didn't understand just through our own rational minds. It can open us to experiencing love. So you mentioned my book. I interviewed about 36 older adults to really understand why are older adults doing psychedelics, or what are they getting out of these experiences. And for some of the people, they described feeling held in love for the first time in their lives. Some people talked about, they were just tired of carrying these wounds, the psychic wounds that of horrible things that had happened in their lives, and really just wanting to come to terms and make peace with that. And they were actually finding that happen. A lot of times people were saying, well, I spent my whole life and my career satisfying other people. Now I'm ready to really investigate myself, to know, who am I? What do I really want to do? And these medicines can really support that kind of exploration as well. There was also people that were finding that they were achieving new levels of intimacy and pleasure with their partners, with their friends, with their community. And, it can be sexual pleasure or non-sexual, but just this, the comfort of the closeness of entering into expanded spaces with other people. People are finding community. The couple that we mentioned earlier, in their 80s, I remember the gentleman said, I went into this kind of thinking about making peace with death. He said, but in the end, he said the group experience, he said it was the love that he experienced with this group. He said it was the most powerful human experience of my life. These are, I guess the point is, we're mature, we're circumspect, we're ready for these experiences. We're not, back in the day, we might have been, dropping acid and going to a concert. Right now, now in older life, we're much more conscientious, circumspect, interested in approaching these experiences intentionally and safely. And I think that that's really a hallmark of journeying in older life.
I love it. Thank you, Abby. And your story kind of made me think of something. Veterans deal with the idea of mortality in a pretty unique way, and we've done some veteran programs. And there was a veteran that came down, had his first psychedelic experience, and after the experience, we're sitting at dinner, and I'll just never forget it. But he said, "I always knew what compassion meant. I understood what the definition was, but I don't ever remember feeling compassion until now."
Mm-hmm.
So this ability to kind of unlock the feeling and the connection with others is just really profound. And Dingle, from a facilitator's perspective, can you explain a bit why these experiences may be able to help reach parts of us that maybe other modalities can't, or what's unique about these?
Wow, how long have you got? So I think I was really hearing what Abby was saying about community, and what you're saying there about compassion, Neil. I think people come together. We kind of have this refrain, like we learn each other's names on a Sunday night when people arrive, and by Friday we feel like family, and everybody is in love with everybody else. It's it's a very powerful community experience. And yet you're also, journeying as an individual. What do psychedelics do? I think they do so many different things for different people. So it's definitely not a one size fits all. But I think, and I think Christine may have mentioned this, is that, we come with wounds. We're wounded. It's the nature of being human. We come with grief. We come with loss. It doesn't need to be bereavement, but we come with having to face impermanence. And we come often with childhood wounds, and with supportive facilitation and in a group context, we're able to help people touch into their wounded parts in a safe, held container. I think that's one of the things that we say very often is safety. How do we create a safe container so people can be vulnerable to themselves and with others in the group? And I think one of the most powerful things is being witnessed. We managed to create a space where people we're as non-judgmental as we can be, because we're all like, hey, we're all in this together. And what I love is that the facilitators are also in it together. We're not like, oh, we know all this and we're imparting it to you. No, we've done our work. That's why we can sit with you. We know how it's helped us. And so I think it's a process of becoming more vulnerable to oneself, allowing yourself to feel, being able to be vulnerable in a group setting. That's an amazing thing to be able to do. And it's astonishing to me how people just manage to do that. And the power of witnessing one another and realizing I'm not alone. We all share very similar things. And then particularly when we get to older life, you may realize people that I've been carrying this burden for a long, long time. And it's affected my relationships, the way that I talk to myself. And I think an experience with psychedelics is a way to help start opening those doors and to begin the healing. And even though people may have very challenging experiences, and many people do, particularly in the first ceremony, there's something magic that happens in that 48 hours till we get to the second ceremony. And I can't tell you how many people say, I'm never doing it again at the end of first ceremony. There's no way, like, really, call the travel agent, I'm leaving. And yet, I think the witnessing, the holding by the facilitators, by the group, very rarely do people not step in again with some confidence to have another exploration. So it's not for everybody, I'm not here to say absolutely everybody must step in and take psilocybin, but it's surprisingly helpful for, I would say, a majority of people. And to be able to get over the fear, because I think, particularly the boomers, right, Abby, we were all raised to think about, I just can't get that fried egg image out of my, this is your brain on drugs, like a hard fried egg. And, there's a lot of unpicking to do. And I think that, the work we are all doing is at the forefront of shifting that perception and helping people feel more comfortable stepping into taking some psychedelic.
Hey, Neil, can I add to that? Because Dingle's talking about psilocybin, but I'd like to talk really quickly about the other medicines because they are different. This is purely generalizations. People have their own unique journeys on the different medicines, but psilocybin, for example, we know is a somatic medicine. It can bring people, we hear story and story after, many stories about cancer patients confronting their cancer. Great story by Thomas Hartle, first Canadian approved for psilocybin therapy through Health Canada. He came to call his cancer almost me. He understood it was consciousness as much as we are all consciousness. It was such a beautiful story. And it brings one to unity consciousness so often, and can help you for that reason overcome your fear of dying. But then there's ketamine. Ketamine's a great medicine because it's legal everywhere. It's a dissociative. So what that tends to do is your mind separates from your body, but as your mind separates from your body, you realize you don't need your body. When they did a retrospective study of some 15,000 psychoactive experiences, they found that ketamine was most like a near-death experience. So people were able to overcome their fear of dying because of it being a dissociative. And there's a woman, Jehan, who would routinely set her intention. She was close to dying through cancer that had metastasized. She routinely set her ketamine intention to go and chit chat on the other side. Didn't use the word chit chat, but that is what she did. And then she would come back. Then there's MDMA. We know MDMA is a heart opener. Extraordinarily useful for if you've got family dynamics that you want to repair, if you can't forgive yourself for something you did, if you can't forgive somebody else for something they did to you. Beautiful medicine. And then there's other medicine, but I'll just also mention 5-MeO. Talk about unity consciousness. That can shoot you right into unity consciousness and really bring a peace near death. And 5-MeO at very low doses is a great medicine when a person is close to the end of life.
Thank you, Christine. And 5-MeO is an interesting one. It's the one that Beckley Psytech has been developing for quite some time, and no one would have seen that coming 5 or 10 years ago. So again, just a moment to remember Amanda and her extraordinary ability to kind of see around the corner and be in front of where the rest of us are. And Dingle, you mentioned this idea of brain on drugs. I think that's it brings up something in all of us. But can you just say more about that? Like how do you see that show up in guests, and what are some of the barriers, and what are some observations that you've seen on programs?
Neil, my internet just went out for that. Could you just ask that question again, please?
Yeah, you mentioned this is your brain on drugs, and that, in my mind, from the early DARE years, how does that show up in the work and the people that you work with? Can you just expand on that a bit, like some of the barriers that presents for us?
Yeah, I think, by the time people have a call with Beckley, an initial introductory call, they're beginning to get over that. Otherwise, they wouldn't have made the call. But I think even when, they're sitting with us on the first day, we have one-on-one interviews with a facilitator. And I think there's normal, what I would say normal anxiety. So it would be weird if you're about to take psychedelics or psilocybin for the first time and not feel a little bit, because you always think, oh, am I ever going to be the same? Am I going to go off somewhere and not come back? How is it going to change my brain? So part of the work we do is really helping people understand that all of that is normal. The cool thing is you won't be the same, but you won't be crazy. So it's that it will shift, your brain will change. And there's a lot of science, which maybe Chris can talk a bit more about the neuroplasticity and the increased connectivity, so that you have an expanded consciousness in a way, which you can bring into your daily life. But I think that one of the other things that we do is, say, hey, well, why don't we start low? There's no reason that you have to jump in with a big dose, and people talk about heroic doses and things like that. It's like, no, we can start slow, we can go easy, and be with you. And that's the other thing we very much offer is clearly accompaniment. So the facilitators can, we're not there to fix you at all, but we're there to accompany you through your journey. And that may be holding your hand, giving you a hug, sitting with you, taking you out into nature. So I think it's not unnatural or abnormal to be worried at all. But I think that the support system that we provide on a retreat can really help allay a lot of those fears. And the other thing is, we don't say, my favorite phrase is, it's not going to be unicorns and rainbows, because it's just not. That's what the books say, and the TV, all the pretty documentaries. It's like, maybe, but likely, we've come to this as wounded individuals. And so likely some of that's going to show up, and it's going to be painful. And that's okay, because it's not like you're going to be in that pain forever. Painful stuff comes up. We can help support you feel that, release that, be with that, and recognize that, you experience a lot of pain through your life. It's going to be painful getting it out. However, when you can release a lot of these things, you have a lot more kind of psychic, spiritual, emotional energy to be more present in your life and to enjoy the preciousness of life. This is one of my things right now, as facing my own mortality every single day, being aware of how precious life is and what does that actually mean? How do I live my life in that recognition? So, yeah, thanks for asking.
Thank you, Dingle. And we've talked about like the different use cases, and I'd like to move us into this next session where we talk a little bit more about the way, and the set and the setting and the how, and how important that is, and kind of, these experiences are different than, or these compounds are different than the pharmaceuticals that many of us are used to taking, where you can take it and you go on about your day. The way in which these experiences are had has a tremendous impact. And so, Dingle, if you could again kind of just expand on that a bit, like, why is it so important for these experiences to be intentional? What makes good set and setting? What do people need to consider when they're considering having one of these experiences?
Yeah, thanks for that, Neil. I think, and I keep talking about Beckley because this is a Beckley webinar, but, the Beckley program is an 11-week program. So we're very much interested in your preparation. So there's a prep app that you can engage with. We make sure that there's at least 2 group meetings, so you meet your fellow participants before you have a one-on-one conversation with the facilitator online. Because we recognize this because people now tell us, they're like, wow, that was so important that we did all of that before we physically came to Jamaica. And part of the prep is helping people sort through their intentions. Why are you coming? Why are you doing this? And one of the things I will often say is, we don't expect you to come with a bullet point like, what's my next move? What job should I do? Da, 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 which is a little bit of a tendency. It's more about having the process of thinking about where you are, what's important to you. And often people will get to their mat at the first ceremony and go, okay, it's whatever the medicine wants to show me, but you've already done the work, the thinking, maybe the journaling, the meditating. And we're very, very blessed at Beckley to have the most beautiful setting. The photographs on the website do no justice. I'm talking about Jamaica here. The Netherlands setting is also very beautiful. It's in a forest. But I have to say, working in Jamaica, we're very, very grateful that we can take people outside of the ceremony space into nature to hug a tree, ground with the grass and the earth. So, and one of I'll just finish by saying this, that the importance of what we call the container. So from the very beginning, that first week, where we start to meet people online and bring the group together, we're creating a safe space so that people can do their work and not worry. And because it is legal in Jamaica, we don't have to be looking over our shoulders and thinking, oh my God, what's going to happen? So we can really relax into the process, into the place. And so, yes, I think set and setting are extremely important. And even when I do private ceremonies here in Jamaica, I'm always looking for that location that is quiet, private, and nature is out the door, and that we're not doing it. I think, and there's a study that Beckley was partook in that showed that the naturalistic setting was more beneficial than doing it in an office, which I think intuitively we could all agree to that. But I just saw that Christine had said something about creating a community, a death sangha, and I'm wondering if it might be nice to just hear about that before we. I don't know, I'm not the moderator, but I just realized it'd be nice to bring Christine's voice in a bit more.
Yes, please, Christine.
Well, a lot of things have been coming up as I listened to everybody talk, and I love the comment. First, I'll just say this. I love the comment about a naturalistic setting, and it's such a no-brainer, right? And we have to do research to say, oh gosh, yes, a naturalistic setting would be great. And there's Tony Bach at the University of Washington is actually going to do a study, in nature, which is so totally cool. Because there isn't any place in the United States of America where we actually can hold ceremonies outside. All right, so the Death Sangha, yeah, I'm so excited about that, and thank you so much, Dingle, for saying it. So, first of all, I get to meet the best people in this field. People who work with those toward the end of life understand what's important in life. They understand, they come to understand death on their own terms. They have a relationship with death. So I also know what I consider to be modern day mystics, a number of people, and there's a lot of you out there, but I know three of them. And we've decided to collaborate on the Death Sangha. And what makes it different than, say, the Death Cafes, which I have participated in many, is that this is going to be a contemplative community, and we're going to deal with understanding our relationship to death. Hence, which allows you to live a more full life in the present moment. But yes, and yes, psychedelics will be a part of it, but not always. This is more like maybe coming to that understanding, altering your state, which we can do a lot of different ways, not just with psychedelics. So altering your state through meditation, for example, we just want to get to that, and we will kick that off in the next 2 months. And then we anticipate holding our first in-person retreat in California in October. That will be with ketamine, which, as I said, is the most like a near-death experience. But it's going to be some really tough conversations. And I know folks who are using psilocybin to experience that moment of death and to feel that bubble, between life and death. And by doing so, they really come to embrace and understand that it's just another shift in consciousness.
I love that, Christine. Thank you. Excited to see how that event goes. And we are coming up close to our Q&A time, but if we could just transitioning into Q&A, if each of you could just maybe take a moment and anything that you'd want the listeners today to take away, what would you want them to remember from this session? Let's start with Abby.
Okay, well, I think that the point that excites me the most out of all this topic is how I think that I think there's a historic convergence here, where on the one hand we have the aging baby boomers who are coming, facing the ends of their lives, and on the other hand we have the maturity of the psychedelic field. So we're now meeting each other, and I think it's just a historic encounter, and I think we're going to be a lot wiser in the way that we approach these medicines in older life. And I think they have the potential to really transform the way we envision what older life is. So that's my that's the takeaway I think I'd like to share with the audience.
Thank you, Abby. And Dingle?
I'm seeing a question in the chat, which is making me reflect that we talked about the set and setting, and we talked about the experience of the ceremonies, but we haven't really spoken about integration. And, we would say, what's the point of doing all of this if you then don't take the learnings and the insights you get in the ceremonies back into your life? And it would be different type of integration if you really are facing a terminal illness versus you're, an aging baby boomer who wants to live your life a little bit differently. And so, with the latter, again, I've just come back to being able to really be present in your life. We have so many ways that we're not present. And being able to really, what does that mean? Being present, and also finding a way to share one's elderhood, to firstly embrace it, and then to be able to say, okay, what is it that I can really share from my own life experience? So I just wanted to drop that in there. I do have a poem, but I think maybe we'll save it for the last minute and have some Q&A when time is ready for that.
That sounds great. And Christine?
Yeah, I want to answer Glenda's comment here. Just to clarify, we're not talking about using psychedelics for the quote unquote death experience. We're talking about using psychedelics as a tool, only one tool that will help people overcome the fear of dying and all of those different dimensions that I mentioned at the beginning. I never tell anybody never. Everybody has an ability to make their own decisions. The only person I know who ever experienced psychedelics right at the end of life was Aldous Huxley. But we all know that psychedelics, again, as a tool, can help us deal with the issues we've been talking about. And I don't know if that clarifies it for Glenda or not. But I will also say that was the topic of this webinar. So I talk about this all day, every day. So I do tend to get maybe overly excited about it. But to your question for everybody, Neil, this is where I find myself going, is helping people understand their own relationship to death and dying, to allow them to live more fully in the present, with psychedelics as one tool.
Thank you, Christine. And Glenda, thank you for the feedback. We can reach out directly, and if there's a topic that you'd like us to go into in more depth, we're happy to do it. We've got such an amazing group of professionals around us that love talking about this in depth. So just thank you for being honest. And so we'll move into some Q&A. So for those on the call, if you have questions that you'd like this group of panelists to answer, please put those in the chat. And then one from earlier that I would love to hear Dingle's answers to is, you said that a lot of times people after the first session, they're not really excited about the second one. And so, like, what's happening there? And then, what's that arc of the experience that we see oftentimes on the programs?
Yeah, thank you for that. So as I have mentioned earlier, people come for personal exploration, personal growth. They've got issues that they want to deal with, relationship issues from childhood, all sorts of things that we carry. And sometimes when people take the medicine, and when I say medicine, I'm referring to psilocybin here, stuff comes up, it comes out. So the grief, the pain, anger, all sorts of emotions can come bubbling up and out. And people will say, this is really hard. And one of the things that I've learned is to help people understand that this could be really hard. This is not going to be sweetness and light. And so we really have to be able to help people prepare for that. And then when it happens, they may go, I can't do that again. I don't want to do that again. It was too hard. I cried too much. I felt too much pain. And yet, one of the things, and I know it's super cliched and we have to be careful how we say it, but we do encourage people to understand that they're in a process, and that if we're able to support them to trust that process. There's a poem I do read on site, which is about a caterpillar, that turning into a butterfly, and that actually you don't just kind of go into a cocoon and slap on wings. Literally, in real life, a caterpillar dissolves into a disgusting kind of yucky goo. And then you turn into, then you reform and become a butterfly. So what we try and help people understand is that this is the goo. You're in that first ceremony. The following day, you feel like, oh my God, this is too much. And yet you realize that other people are experiencing that as well. And so hence the witnessing and supporting one another and being able to be vulnerable. And usually, almost always, by the time we get to the second ceremony, people begin to understand that it is a process and that they can step back in with the support of the facilitators and the rest of the group. And again, it's often revelatory. And then people will go, oh, now I realize why I had that first experience, however hard it was. And this is a generalization. And of course, it's different for everybody. But that's the kind of arc that we often see, is like, absolutely not, no way, I'm going home, to, okay, maybe everybody else is going through some tough stuff and it's not just me. And then, okay, let me feel safe, step back in and see what comes out. So for me, this is one of the beauties of this work, is sitting with people, holding people through their process. And then, of course, as we hold them on the 6 weeks of integration afterwards.
Yes, absolutely. And again, I think why, we're very supportive of people being able to have these experiences in a medical environment, and think that it's very important for people to be able to have these experiences in a naturalistic environment where there's more spaciousness around the experience. It's what's happening kind of in between. And I think we're, big believers in having two experiences for the reasons that Dr. Dingle explained. Another question, how is it safer to experience psychedelics now? And for people that don't want to break the law, where are psychedelics legal?
Well,
Abby?
go ahead.
Well, I'm just curious, is there one of you that would like to take that?
Well, I'd like to start, and then Abby can add to it. Why are psychedelics safer now? They're not necessarily safer now. We generally recommend some test kits if you're going to be doing this on your own, uh, and or a trusted guide. So there's that aspect of it. But as one friend told me, sometimes doing psychedelics, it's a matter of your risk tolerance. I'm an educator, and I think everybody here agrees. We are not condoning the use of psychedelics in any place where it's not legal. And so, but as an educator, I have to talk about all of these medicines because we know people are using them and we want them to use them safely. So, having said that, ketamine again is legal everywhere. Psilocybin, as we know, is legal in the Netherlands, in Jamaica, in uh, Australia, Spain, Portugal, Colorado, Oregon, and soon to be in New Mexico. So there are those viable options. Also, psilocybin can be available in decriminalization jurisdictions where the law does not bother you. And then the last I'll mention are churches. So legitimate churches, still a little bit of a gray area, where churches are operating under Religious Freedom Restoration Act and can offer the medicines as sacraments.
Thank you, Christine. And I will note it's a bit confusing in the United States because we have the federal laws that cover all states, and then we have state laws. And so for psilocybin, for instance, it's legal within the state framework, but it's still federally illegal. It's still against the Controlled Substances Act. Do I think that the feds are going to prosecute an individual that's using psilocybin in a legal state environment? No, but it's good to just be aware of the realities. And I think it's good to just call out to the challenges that the industry faces right now with this kind of conflict between the federal law and the state laws. And I think we're all very hopeful that this new executive order that came out a few weeks ago is going to accelerate some of the changes that we need to kind of get the laws changed so that the companies that want to operate can get access to financing and insurance and all these things that are more complicated when the federal laws don't allow it. And for those that we're getting like lots of great questions. It's such a good panel today. We're very easy to get in touch with. And so if you would like to send us questions through email after this panel, we'll make sure you get them answered. So nobody's stress about the time. And Abby, yes?
Yeah. I was just going to add to that last question that you had, or the issue that you raised about when I interviewed a lot of three dozen older adults, I found a lot of them were comfortable going into the underground to find their psychedelic experiences, but a number of them weren't. And so for those who don't want to break the law, who want to stay in a legal context, I think the retreats like the Beckley retreats offer a really important option. And what you're going to get in that kind of context is that you're going to be screened properly. So your medications, for older adults, if you're taking other medications, you need to have those considered. So your whole medical background is going to be considered to be appropriate. If you want to have an experience like this, you're going to have all the support systems in place. So I think that in terms of safety, particularly for older adults, I think these legal alternatives are an excellent opportunity, whether at the Beckley retreats or in Oregon or Colorado. And I just want to say, in terms of accessibility, if you think that these experiences might be out of your price range, I know a lot of these organizations, I think Beckley included, do have scholarships or sliding scales. So it's not. I would hope that financial considerations wouldn't be a no-go for people.
Yeah, the states of Colorado and Oregon have social equity programs. The state of New Mexico has actually set aside a fund to subsidize or pay in total for in this case, psilocybin journeys. So it's a matter of kind of checking it out and finding the individuals and licensed service centers in Oregon or Colorado that will offer these subsidized sessions. Yeah, so I also wouldn't rule it out. And I see that the one comment here about in Oregon, there is a lovely nonprofit I do want to give a shout out to, the Survivorship Collective, and they organize psilocybin group retreats for cancer patients. And so it is an organization that you can look at, and they do also help subsidize the retreats for individuals who can't afford them.
Thank you, Christine. Well, we're right about at time, and I always like having a few minutes for people, because if they have a call, we don't want them rushing right into their next call. So, Dingle, would you like to read the poem, and that can close us out for this session? And then we got such a amazing turnout for this one. I think we'll need to do another one, and we'll let everyone know when that is. But I'll pass it to you, Dingle.
Thank you, Neil. So this is a poem called Losing Everything by a gentleman called Jeff Foster. You will lose everything. Your money, your power, your fame, your success, perhaps even your memories. Your looks will go, loved ones will die, your body will fall apart. Everything that seems permanent is impermanent and will be smashed. Experience will gradually, or not so gradually, strip away everything that it can strip away. Waking up means facing this reality with open eyes and no longer turning away. But right now, we stand on sacred and holy ground, for that which will be lost has not yet been lost. And realizing this is the key to unspeakable joy. Whoever or whatever is in your life right now has not yet been taken away from you. This may sound trivial, obvious, like nothing, but really it is the key to everything. The why and how and wherefore of existence. Impermanence has already rendered everything and everyone around you so deeply holy and significant and worthy of your heartbreaking gratitude. Loss has already transfigured your life into an altar.
Gives me chills. Thank you all. What a special session. Yes, and we'll send this out. We'll send the recording out to everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. If you need anything, reach out, and have a great rest of your day. Take care.
Thanks for joining.